it's great to see some names I recognize. I think a lot of you will have seen me maybe on your course actually in the last year already. And obviously, I didn't want to come here today and rehash things that you already know. A lot of you already have some direction to where you're going. A lot of you have maybe even seen me already about your CVs, cover letters. So what we thought would be more useful for you guys today, because anecdotally hearing from students, we're not sure that everyone is aware of exactly all the great strengths and talents that you have upon leaving the animation course here at the university. So today, what I wanted to do was talk through a little bit of how we can go about analyzing our strengths and how we can really harness them in certain areas of our job search, whether that be interviews, whether that be networking, just looking at, how we can be a bit more self-aware about our strengths, how we can dig down into those, and put it towards our career. So move forward. So I've got kind of 3 questions I wanted to kind of start off with, and I can obviously see some names that I know already, but please just be active in the chat if you've got any answers to these. So the first one is like, who's actually used the University Employability Service? This could be while you're at university, or this can be following your graduation. Just pop a yes in the chat if you've used it, or a no, just so I can kind of get an idea of where we're at with everyone on the call today. Move across to this one. So we've got Dev, got Maria. I think you're the 2 that I probably know a little bit already. Okay, Jack's tried. Okay, that's interesting. Maybe we can dig into that a little bit more at the end when we go through a little bit of what we offer to alumni, so we can see why that might have been difficult for you. Awesome. But we've got a couple of yeses there, which is good. So we already know a little bit of what's on offer then from the Employability Service. And one of the reasons that quite a few of you will be here today is because you do want that little bit of extra skills help with actually finding, your next challenge at the minute. So what are some of the challenges that you guys have been seeing in the job market for yourself? Maybe it's barriers that you're finding. Maybe it's just challenges that you've been facing in, getting a job. Is it interviews, CVs? Where are you guys kind of finding your challenges at the moment? Just feel free to share in the chat any that you can think of. So hopefully, as I go through this, I can start to maybe touch on a few of those as well. So it's going to be a bit more tailored, I guess, to your own situations. Cool. So Jack, we've got getting employed. We've got interviews specifically there. Awesome. So we'll talk about that. The Dev with no response after sending my application. Okay, so that's like getting your foot in the door. So maybe we can talk a little bit about how your strengths and how we can frame that a little bit. Okay. And we've got Maria just typing now as well. Okay, awesome. So Jack's in a sort of similar boat to Dev then. Okay, cool. Trying in terms of CV and jobs prefer more experience. Okay, that's a really, really good point as well. With regards to the experience, because obviously we can see in the market at the minute, there are slightly less entry positions than maybe we've seen in the past, but we can still get ourselves in there if we're clever about it. So that's okay. We can maybe discuss a couple of ways to go about that as well. What I'd say as well is if you see jobs that need like 1 to 2 years of experience, there's definitely no harm in you applying anyway. Especially within creative industries, it's really important to note that it's a lot of the time about what you can do at that moment in time. You've already worked on projects which are in your portfolio now. So if you've got, 7 out of 10, maybe even 6 out of 10 of the qualifications or qualities that they need on that job description, you can probably pick up the other 2 or 3. And if the only barrier is like 1 year, 2 years of work experience, I would be applying for that anyway as you're going along. But wonderful. And then to finish up then, because that was more to give me an idea of what to touch on, but who's already thought about their personal brand? Who already has a personal brand that they're thinking about? Just a quick yes or no will do, or maybe it's yes, but you've not thought about it. Maybe it's no, but you want to get one. See Jack and Maria active in the chat. That's good. Okay, Jack, no, but wants one. Awesome. Okay, Stephanie's thought about it. That's really good to see. Okay, no. Good. Wait for Maria before I move forward. Thought about a brand, only want to work under an official brand instead of freelance. Okay, that's absolutely fine. So your personal brand can mean a lot of things, right? And a few of you might be shocked here to find out that you actually all have a personal brand already. And this personal brand is made up of a number of different components. And what we're going to look at today is how you can go, like how you can curate this personal brand to give yourself a great first impression, in these different scenarios. Because what you got to think is when, your friends talk about you, when, academics maybe talk about their ex-students and the great stuff they've done, like Olive showing off your work at the minute. I think you mentioned Dev there. These are all things where people are talking about you. And it all comes back to the impression you've made. And it's something that in employability, we would call your personal brand. Obviously, we think about it more as, you've got your own company, you've got a brand, but actually you as a person have a way that you're perceived by people, which is going to be that personal brand. So after this session, what we do is understand the importance of understanding and curating your personal brand. We want to have tools to reflect on your strengths and areas for development. We want to understand the components of an elevator pitch and how this can relate to interview questions. And also we'll look at, how to answer some competency questions, how to answer some motivational questions as well. And then we'll also just touch on at the end speculative approaches. I think I might have covered this with a few of you already, but it's always good to have a little reminder that, speculative applications are there as an option, especially if you're not immediately finding roles at the level that you want within the industry at this moment in time. So with regards to your personal brand, according to Jeff Bezos, this is taken from LinkedIn Learning. You can go to the video from the slides after this session if you want. But a brand is what others say about you when you aren't in the room. So if you are consciously curating your personal brand, you'll have more of an idea of how people are going to perceive you. You're going to understand a little bit better what people are saying about you when you're not in the room, because you're going to know what how you want to be perceived and how you want to put yourself forward. So what constitutes your personal brand? It's all of your strengths, first of all. People will talk about what you're good at. They'll talk about, the great projects that you've done. They'll talk about maybe if you're, kind to someone, they might think you're kind-hearted. A lot of people, when you're in the world of work, they won't remember every single bit of work you've done, but they will remember what you made them feel. So things like, compassion, good communication, teamwork will be remembered, as a part of the strengths. Your weaknesses are also there too. So it's really good to be self-aware of, areas for your development and actually actively looking for opportunities to continually develop yourself professionally as well. On top of this, it's just your behavior. So if you say you're going to do something, do you follow through on that? Are you punctual? Are you reliable? All these things can have a telling on how people will perceive you. This is why it comes down to how you portray yourself both consciously and unconsciously. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's others' perception. And these are, things that you can see both virtually and in person. So it's really important that when we're looking at our portfolios, looking at our CVs, LinkedIn, whatever it might be, that we're trying to really think hard about, okay, how am I presenting myself here? Am I presenting myself how I want to present? But what I want to focus on first is building up this personal brand, right? So what I'd like to really talk about today are strengths, because I think it's really good to focus on what we're good at, especially if it is a little bit tricky at the minute in the job market. It's still good to rely on your strengths, right? Because there's still so many things that you guys are good at. You've done a whole degree in animation and got very good grades, a lot of you, from what I've seen. So you're definitely very talented people. So I think today it'd be a good time to reflect on your strengths and how that can be used to move forward. So with regards to personal brand, there was a, I guess, influencer, inspirational speaker, whatever you want to call them, called Jeff Grout, and he coined the 3x plus Y method. Usually this is used for businesses, but ultimately what it is that there are three things that a lot of people in that industry will have that will be your strengths. But what you'll have that is unique is your why. What is that added extra that you're putting on top? So for example, in a business context, there was a budget airline years ago going up against, EasyJet, Ryanair. It was a new independent one. And they had, all the things you'd expect, like, easy boarding. You could book your seats. They get you from A to B for a really cheap price. And their why was that they were the only airline that sold filter coffee, or they had like espresso machines on there as well. So you could get a really, really nice coffee, which was something different to other flights. And that was just their little extra that they added that other people didn't have. But we can put this onto ourselves if we're thinking about, okay, what are your key strengths for animation? Is it going to be your soft skills, like that communication? Is it going to be your actual animation skills or your technical skills? Is it your eye for composition? Is it your ability to work within a particular domain, like maybe video games, maybe it's in creating educational videos. There's a lot of different areas you could be strong. But then at the end of the day, what is that little bit of extra that you can give in relation to that? Maybe it's if you're applying to a certain studio, maybe you've been studying that kind of art style for years. And that could be something that could mark you out from other candidates applying for those roles. And it's really important as well when we think about our strengths that we think about how are you going to evidence these skills. When you're putting it on your CV, anyone can put some words on a piece of paper, but what we really want to have is a good bit of evidence to go, this isn't just my opinion that I'm good at this. I can evidence this through these projects I'm showing you as well. So what we can do if we want to dig a little bit deeper into our strengths as well, because some of us might think we work really well in a team, but what does that actually mean, right? Because if you're looking at everything on a job description, they could say they want, solutions orientated person who can collaborate, who can work within multidisciplinary teams. There can be lots of different ways that they're going to frame the teamwork aspect. So what I would suggest to you with things like teamwork is to really think about what is it that makes you a great team player? Is it that you're great at motivating others? Is it that you are really good at taking a leadership role within that team and facilitating and being accountable for other people's work? Are you a really strong individual contributor? So it's really good to sometimes break down some of these, I don't want to say generic skills, but some of these ones that commonly come up into those smaller compartments of why is it that I'm good at this? And then when you think more in that kind of down that kind of track, I guess, you'll be able to pick up a little bit easier specific examples, maybe from your experience, where you've used those different skills. Communication is another I mentioned on here as well, just because a lot of people say they're great verbal and written communicators, but at the end of the day, what is it about the communication that makes it great? Is it the way you've broken down the information? Is it your ability to understand and actively listen to what other people are saying to come back with the most relevant options for them? So what we can think about here as well, again, is just what actually is it that's that secret ingredient that makes you great at these particular things? So as I said today, I do want to reflect on all of your strengths. And sometimes it can be really hard to just be put on the spot and think, okay, what am I good at? It's not a natural thing for some of us to do, especially writing a CV and a lot of people come to me and say it feels like they're bragging, right? But if there is a place to brag, it's going to be in your job search and it's going to be on your CV. So I'd like to reflect on in the chat now, what do you think are 3 of your strengths that you might be able to start using to build your personal brand? If you can't think of 3, even one's good, but let's use the chat just to reflect a little minute on what are some skills that you guys think you can bring for a role? Cool. I'm just over in the chat, so any answers appreciated. Ideally 3, but even if you've just got one that you want to start with, that'd be great. And I've definitely seen some of your work already, so I know that you've got some strengths there. Cool. I can see Dev and Jack already in there. That's awesome. Cool. So we've got Jack there, the unique art style. Awesome. So that could even be a why almost as well as a strength. If you've got a unique art style that's going to mark yourself out, potentially that could also be that little bit extra that you're adding as well. Awesome. Character design. Yeah, definitely a skill that's going to be needed across the board there. Writing in of itself can be a skill. What I'd say is that's one of those really good ones that you can break down a little bit further, whether it's prose, whether it's screenwriting, whether it's just storytelling in general, right? Because that could also come under the communication bracket. So that's a really good one that you can even break into smaller components. We've got Dev there with analytical skills, awesome, and technical skills. So I think those 2 there, again, are 2 really good ones you can break down deeper. With analytical skills, is it your ability to break down a story where you're given like the A and B and break it into smaller components or break a project into that? Is it using data to understand how well what you're doing is going? So you can break these things down into smaller chunks as well. And technical skills, of course, any industry skills out there, Maya, Blender, whatever it might be, if you're particularly good on those things, you can always be mentioning those 2. Maria, leadership, wonderful. Compassion, communication, creativity, and problem solving. Yeah, so what you've got there are some really, really good transferable skills that are going to go between a lot of different roles. So I think that's a really, really good starting point as well. And Stephanie there, storyboarding, delegating work, problem solving. I think there's some really good strengths there. I think, like I said, even from those, we can extrapolate them further and really dig down into some very specific skills to give employers. So I think that's a really, really good starting point there. And as I kind of put as the second part here, I think we don't need to do this question now, but what you can always do if you're struggling to think of strengths yourself is ask people, what do they think you're good at? When they think about your work, what is it that they think's really great? Ask people you maybe did projects with at university. Ask, Olive and Ryan if they're about. They'll be able to tell you what you're good at with regards to animation as well. There's absolutely no harm in asking people if you're unsure how you might hit these things. Another technique you can use to think about this, again, it's sort of another technique taken over from businesses, over to kind of personal and professional development. But it's the idea of using a SWOT analysis, which covers our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Personally, I don't enjoy the threats part of this, but it does come into a couple of these, I guess. But what we can do with this is think more about, okay, what's our strengths that we've got? Where are areas for development, I would say, rather than weaknesses, because these are all things that we can still develop further. For our opportunities, where have we been able to show our strengths? Where are we going to be able to find maybe online courses or further help to be able to develop our weaknesses or be able to showcase our strengths, whether that's, putting your work in for awards, whether that's bidding on projects, for example, or maybe Upwork or Fiverr, whatever it might be. So you can think about these different boxes and use them in lots of different ways. So one, you can use it for yourself, as we've just kind of talked about then. Another way you can look at it is actually with regards to jobs that you're looking to apply for, right? So we saw, I think someone mentioned at the very beginning there that, they're struggling with finding roles that are of the correct skill level for them. So what we can maybe do here is put the opportunity into these boxes, right? We can look at, okay, what have I got from this? Where are my strengths with regards to this opportunity? Maybe technically you've got all the things, maybe you've got the soft skills, and your weaknesses that they're looking for that many years of experience. But then if you look at the opportunity, then how can you prove to them that your skills are of a level that's still going to work, with as well as someone with a year of experience? So you might want to look at personal projects. Could you build something maybe in the art style of that studio, which is going to help? Obviously, that might take ages. So obviously, it might be something that you can also use for multiple things and put into your portfolio. Or could it be, that when you think about it, they maybe don't need that much experience for what they're asking you to do based on your understanding of animation already. The last one here is overcoming threats. Again, I don't like this term. I prefer to call it, barriers, something like that. And what this can be is looking at your weaknesses. Maybe it could be looking at the job market and going, why is there maybe slightly less roles out there at the junior level? I know a lot of us are talking about how generative AI is becoming really big within design industries and, how that might be taking away some kind of entry-level work that was done before without generative AI. But what we've got to think of there is, okay, if that's a threat, what's our opportunity? What is it that we offer that's going to, make us a better option than someone just doing it with generative AI? And it's going to be that personal touch. It's going to be these things like the strengths you mentioned in the chat here, like compassion, problem solving, that ability to communicate, maybe that analytical skill, because they're not going to be able to necessarily look at the work and truly analyze it through a generative AI. So there's still all these soft skills which are going to be needed beside this. So that's just one example of how you could even use the idea of threats, to try and pitch yourself back as well. Obviously, if anyone's got any questions as we're going through, pop them in the chat, because I know I'm rattling along pretty quick at this point. Cool. But I guess this is the kind of, maybe not the most practical element of today, but one of the more practical elements is how can reflecting on our strengths actually help you at interview, right? How's it actually going to work in your job search, other than you just, feeling good about yourself because you've got all these wonderful strengths and personal brand? So one thing we can start doing is finding key skills on job descriptions. So this is just a job description I've taken for a junior animator. And what you'll find as you go through here is you can be ticking off all those kind of strengths that you've got already. And what you might find is when you start searching about the studio, a lot of these things you might have already done in your coursework, which could be a little bit of a why with the experience, maybe with the art style, things like that. We can see here they're even looking for a particular house style as well. So first of all, look for those skills on the job description. How can you frame your strengths to make you the best candidate for that job? And then when we come to the types of interview question, we know that the skills are generally going to be tested more in a competency-based kind of question, okay? These are going to be your kind of, what would you do in this situation? Or how would you go about this particular problem? Or tell me about a time where you've worked in a team or solved a difficult issue. So that's kind of one side of the interview questions where we can, maybe even use our kind of SWOT analysis to go, here's my strengths, where have been my opportunities to show these strengths as well. On the other side here, we've always got the motivational part of this. So it's worth to kind of think, this is where the why will come in. It's why am I the unique best candidate for this particular opportunity? Okay, you don't always have to be the unique, absolute best candidate, but what we can do is use those extra talents, our background, maybe those things like our compassion, our kindness to really get across, why we'd be amazing within this particular team. Why is it that this particular company is something that's important to you? Maybe you've played their games, maybe you've seen their art already. These are all things that can go into this motivational aspect. So I know this is a question that a lot of people come to me with, and they're always wondering, I get into the interview, the first question they say is, tell me about yourself, but what on earth do they want to know, right? So if we've been looking through the job description, we want to tell them about ourselves, but we also want to frame it towards our own strengths and frame it towards also, what they need for the job. So what we can do, I like to split into kind of three parts here. These guys kind of split into two. So first of all, we can state who we are professionally. I would also say in your case, academically as new graduates. So you can say that, I've just graduated from my BA animation at the University of Greenwich. I've got a real specialism in this area of animation, for example. And it could be, professionally, I've worked part-time in customer service. So I'm really looking forward to working with third-party clients on different, marketing animations or marketing projects, if that was what you were going for. So what we can do is put together kind of some of what we are academically, some of what we do professionally. And one thing when I was a recruiter, because I was a recruiter for 5 years before I joined the university, and what I really enjoyed seeing from people was a little bit of the personal as well. So if you can add something at the end that, can reiterate some form of motivation for the role, or maybe it's something that's very unique to you and your journey, that you want to just add on the end of this to help people remember you, that can be a really, really strong way to close a tell me about yourself. Obviously, any questions on that, please put them in the chat. I'm going to move on, but obviously Olive or Jordan will let me know if anyone wants me to go through anything around that again. Because I'd just like to move on also to kind of competency-based questions. So I gave you a sort of couple of examples regarding these just before off the top of my head. But here's a little list that you can maybe start to use and map onto your different interviews as you're getting them. So for example, it could be, describe a situation where you had to explain something complex to a client or colleague. Maybe you could think about that as maybe there's a complex story that you've had to break down into a 2-minute pitch or something like this. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go about kind of mapping these kinds of questions onto the roles that you're going to be doing. But a good way to maybe think about answering some of these questions, I seem to have lost the evaluation part of this, is to use the STAR model. So what we can do is think about the situation, the task, the action, and the result. And when we're thinking about our strengths, we really need to think about, again, that evidence, when have we used it? And this STAR model is a great way for us to be able to tell people about how we've maybe used a strength within a certain situation. The first 2 points here are kind of setting out the context. The action is what you carried out, which used that skill. And then the result is hopefully a good outcome, especially if you try to show them that you're great at a skill. But for example, you might get asked something along the lines of, tell me about a time when something didn't go to plan and you had to use feedback to improve your product or something along these lines. And in that case, what our result might be is actually, first of all, that it didn't go as well as you hoped. Maybe you had a really ambitious project that you didn't manage to finish for your masters. Maybe it was an unfinished project, but it still had a lot of good stuff in there. So in your evaluation, what you might say is, I might have restructured the project a little bit for the next time, and actually taking it forward now into this freelance project I've just tried. It's actually been a lot more smooth. I've been able to get everything out by the deadline with absolutely no issues. So it could be something like that. So always consider as well, if there's an opportunity for evaluation, to show that self-awareness as well around a sort of past experience.
We've got a question in the chat from Deb. That says, Can you elaborate on the why are you here point from tell me about yourself formula?
Awesome. Yeah. So what that could be is if you're in an interview, if there's space to kind of elaborate on, they say, tell me about yourself. You could always close it up by framing it back to the interview by saying, if you've gone through your academic and your professional background and you've talked a bit about, maybe, uniquely, what you're about, there might also be scope at the end of that to be able to say, and, with this all in mind, I've decided to apply for this particular role in your company because of XYZ. And this could relate back, to anything from those kind of three categories. Ideally, what we want is all three of those categories to be framed towards that particular role. So it can kind of be implied while you're there on that particular day through those three sections, or you can just have a little, couple of words at the end of that answer to be able to really link it strongly back to the job that you're applying for and that they're actually assessing you for. Okay. I hope that answers your question there, Deb. And it's not, clear as mud. So that's good. Cool. So I think the last kind of thing I wanted to go into here, obviously, if I didn't answer that question, Dev, please ask anything again. But what I want to do is just move also forward from interviews to how can, reflecting on our strengths help with networking as well. Because especially within kind of creative industries, so I used to hire particularly actually for front-end developers within tech, so a little bit different, but some elements are still kind of similar, where a lot of companies will have CVs for people at the junior level, so they might not advertise for some of these junior roles that they have. So what you can do is use your strengths when you're networking, when you're sending out speculative applications, to try and find these kind of hidden job opportunities, so to speak. So one of these things that you can think about is the elevator pitch. I know some of you have worked with me already on the professional summary area of your CV, if you chose to have that on there. And the idea here is quite similar. So when you think about the elevator pitch, you're going to imagine that you're in a elevator. Don't keep saying elevator. Where you're in a lift with the artistic director of a studio. The doors have closed and you've got 1 minute to say hi, and introduce yourself, ideally leaving a memorable impression, right? So what this means is that we've got to be concise, we've got to be to the point, and we've got to front load our strengths and our unique selling points, that why, okay? So it's a really good way to think about how do I want to be remembered by this person, and how am I going to get that across to them? So one way you can start to do this, and you'll hear me say this about so many things in employability, is that there are three main questions to think of. Who are you? So your credentials, again, coming back to tell me about yourself. What's your experience? What are your academic credentials for this particular role? Then you can think about that what. So what do you bring? What are the strengths that you're looking to impart that you've got to that person so that they're going to think, this person could be really good to get back in touch with, actually, if I've got this particular problem to deal with. And what we can do as well with that what is maybe add a couple of examples of where we've done that, given the evidence. And then lastly, again, coming back to, I guess, the theme of this particular presentation is what is your why? What is it that's going to mark you out? Okay. So I think if we've got time at the end, we might just nip back to this and have a little think about a quick who, what, why. But just to kind of finish up this, because I mentioned speculative applications earlier, this is a great place as well to really think about your personal brand and what you bring. So this is where you'll apply for a role that, if you see a role for a senior animator in a particular company, if they fill that senior animator role, it might be that they've then got someone who'd be able to train up a junior animator, right? So what you might choose to do is reach out to that company speculatively, sending them a speculative cover letter and sending them your CV tailored to their company or a role in their company, and saying to them, look, I know that I might not be the right person for this exact role, but actually I'm looking for this level of position. Is it likely that, you might have that opportunity available? Or, would you like to get in touch with me maybe 3 months down the line if anything comes up? It happens way more often than you think. I know it can feel daunting to put yourself out there like that. But actually, as a recruiter, I used to receive quite a lot of these. Even now, I've not been a recruiter for 2 years, and I still get people reaching out to me as if I'm a tech recruiter, sending me speculative applications in case I know of any opportunities. So it's absolutely fine to reach out to studios. Sometimes it could be you've networked with someone at an event and you just want to test the waters with them, asking about what kind of opportunities are available. It might be a recruiter in a big studio, seeing if anything's coming up. There's a lot of different places where this can be a useful approach, especially if you're struggling to find exactly the opportunity that you're looking for. And yeah, lastly, with regards to networking, your personal brand can really come forward, obviously in your LinkedIn, obviously in your portfolio, any other sites that you're on. I know obviously for portfolios I'm on multiple sites, maybe DeviantArt, things like that. On the other side of this, it'll come up in your work experience too. So if you've got a part-time job that you're working in beside, your job search, it's absolutely fine to talk to people about your job search if it's relevant to them. Understand what other people do, because you never know where that next opportunity can actually come from. And with this in mind, going to events, conferences, things like that will get you in the room with people of similar interest to you who would likely want to speak with you as well. And then lastly, you can, as alumni from the university, you can still come to our employability events, our employability fairs for up to 2 years after you graduate, and you've got access to all of our services for that time as well. Cool. So that's kind of pretty much everything from me today, because the last slides are kind of everything we offer as an employability service, and I'd rather do that, either separately, just sending you the slides so you've got that. But what I'd like to reflect on with you guys then, because I've talked very quickly, so I want to make sure that at least something has sunk in for you today from what I've been talking about. So yeah, it may be in the chat. What's one thing that you think you might be able to take away from today, which might help you, in that job search? And yeah, also the alumni community, not just employability. That's just my shameless brag, shameless plug. So is there anything that people think they can take away from today to implement in their job search? Or if not, is there anything that you think might be useful if we were to put on, say, another alumni session for animation that you think would help in the job search? Might be another way to ask that. I can see Dev and Minna typing.
We've allowed everyone's mic, so if you want to just shout out instead of typing, please feel free.
Yeah. We've got Dev there as well with applying for jobs that say 2 to 3 years required, as well as some speculative applications. Yep. So one thing to think about, especially with this, I guess I kind of touched on it earlier, but if you know absolutely everything on a job description, what are you going to learn in that particular role? I think some of the best advice I ever got was if you're a little bit nervous about applying for the role, if you're not nervous about applying for the role, the opportunity maybe isn't big enough for you. So it's absolutely fine to, feel that it might be a little bit out of your depth to be able to see if you can, pick up stuff quickly. Cool. We've got Maria and Jack as well. Yeah, I also hate this, a Jeff Bezos quote. It's just one that comes up well from LinkedIn Learning. What I'd say is think of it more as, just making how are you going to make that first impression to, make people remember you when you're outside of the room as well. That's a really good one. I just see Maria there as well. So let Maria give her input too. This time, process great. Work on implementing. Thank you for the opportunity for future experiences. Awesome. So I'm glad those things you can take away from today. The thing is, we also want to give you guys a good amount of time, I think, for questions, just generally as well. Any that you might have to put to myself, Ryan, Olive, or Jordan around the alumni team. So do you guys have any questions that you'd just like to ask at this point?
Maybe I could just very quickly share something. So just in anticipation of this meeting and the session, I've asked one of our current teachers, so she's a freelancer, to give a bit of insight that is specific to the animation freelance side and what might be useful advice. And so she flagged up very much the same things that you said, Michael, actually, about the necessity to find your own niche. So to do something that really sets you apart from others, and people will remember you for it, right? So, I mean, I know most of you in the room, So Stephanie, for instance, your storyboards, right? I will always remember them. That just so very, very clear, very well communicated. You know, I mean, I could sing everybody's praises, but the key is, I think, to find something that really makes you stand out. He also suggested to do something that you like doing, so that it's that you're not getting bored of it. And to keep building this network. Literally everywhere you go, the animation industry is so small and people do remember each other. And so just to put yourself on people's radar for them to be aware of what you can do is going to help you as and when the next job opens up. There's a couple of practical tips as well. And so maybe I will share some of them maybe together with the slides afterwards, if that's possible. But I think these are really key takeaways. You really never know. It might be that the next job comes through one of your fellow alumni, for instance, right? Or somebody that you've met at a conference. But yeah, networking.
Thank you so much, Ola, for that. I've just raised my hand because I thought I would just share my own personal experience about finding a job in the UK. So I am the deputy head of alumni relations and regular giving at Greenwich. So I'm just here just to see this, like how the evening is going along. But I thought it might be helpful just to share what it was like for me in terms of how I engaged with my alumni community. So when I first moved to the UK, I didn't know anyone whatsoever. And the first thing I did was reach out to my alumni community. So I went to Berkeley, I reached out to them. I went to University of Melbourne and I reached out to them, and both of them had very established communities in the UK. And so what I did was, it was just like really informal. I just had drinks with a couple of people, got to know them, and just sort of asked their advice about, like, you know, how is it like to work in the UK? You know, what do I need to do in terms of getting my CV up to scratch? Do you guys know an inn anywhere? They didn't know it anywhere, but that's okay. My next step was like, okay, well, I have this community. Who else can I reach out to? So what I did was I reached out to one of my academics. So he was my head of department at University of Melbourne, who just so happened to also now live in the UK. And, you know, staff are also part of the alumni community as well. So I reached out to him and just said, you know what, I've just moved here. Can we grab a coffee? I'm just looking for a job. I'm not sure what it is that I want to do, but I know you work at a university. They worked at Goldsmiths. And I was like, can I just pick your brain? And he said, yeah, of course. So I went, spoke to him, and he had a really good meeting. And he just said, oh, by the way, there's this part-time job or this contract job coming up. Why don't you apply just to see if it's something you like? So I applied. He was my reference, and I got the job. And because I got that job, I ended up staying at Goldsmiths for 7 years. They ended up sponsoring my work visa so that I can remain in the UK. And it was really just because I reached out to him and just was like, you know what, you taught me at Goldsmiths, you know, the people that I know. And because of that, I was able to like find a job and be able to stay in the UK. So I do believe like the power of alumni connections, whether that's your fellow alumni, whether that's the academics who have taught you, or whether that's people like us who are professional services, they are there to like connect and like find ways for you, like find ways to help you. So it is really about like networking and leveraging who it is that you know. You just never know what's going to come from it. So I guess my advice is, don't be afraid to reach out to people. Everyone, like, I get chuffed when like former students who I used to teach reach out to me and ask for a reference or ask for advice. People do want to help, and you know, that's kind of what the space is here for as well. As you can see, since you know all of it's here, Ryan's here, Michael's here, myself and Jordan here. So you know, I think definitely tap into that. But yeah, that was what I had to say, and hopefully that helps a little bit in terms of alleviating any concerns about reaching out to people and using your networks.
Yeah, awesome. I think they're all really, really good points as well. I know quite a few of us here in the room have definitely got jobs for our network at different points. And I've just seen Dev's question as well in the chat. So his question was, how do I know if my CV or cover letter is good enough to send? It's a really good question. What I would say is, you know, on your CV, you want to be front loading whatever's your main selling points, right? So you might have sections with education, you might have sections with experience. And I think in a lot of cases, actually, a lot of people coming through maybe animation especially might need a separate section that's called like animation projects or academic projects, so that you actually have the space in your CV to talk about your academic projects, like your final year project or certain coursework in a little bit more depth. So what I'd say is, if you're looking at your CV and you feel like you've put forward your main selling points and you feel like you've done all that you can to evidence the skills that they're looking for on that job description, you're probably in a good place to be able to send that off. I say all the skills. If you're evidencing the skills that you can for that particular job, definitely send that off. What you've got to remember is like, from being a recruiter, I've got probably tens of thousands of CVs at this point. And I've seen, a hell of a lot of bad ones. But what I've also seen are thousands of good ones, with many of them done in very different ways. There's not like one formula for what's correct. So make it your own. Make sure it's really showing off your strengths, and make sure that just when you're looking at the job, that you've just done that little bit of tailoring, a little bit of checking to be sure that, you're putting your best foot forward. And obviously, if you're really unsure about your CV, you can always book in appointments with the Employability service through Target Connect. I put the QR code for that in the slides that you'll receive afterwards. And as alumni, just remember not to go through the student sign-in. Just set yourself up with an alumni account, which will be approved usually within a couple of days for you to start booking those appointments in. Hope that kind of helps, with understanding that.
Could I ask a question maybe about Target Connect? So how does it work? So you can access Target Connect for a number of years as an alumni, is that right?
Yeah, so usually when you're at the university, you'll go through the single sign-on process that you'll use for portal, everything like that, if you use the student sign-in. Obviously, once you've graduated, after I think it's 3 months, you lose that email address. So you'll have to, when you go to Target Connect, so greenwich.targetconnect.net, it'll prompt you to register as an alumni. So you'll just go through that registration process, and you'll get an email when that account has then been approved. And once you go into the homepage, it should look the same as when you were a student, with all the great tools we've got, like CV checkers like CareerSet. We've got CV templates there as well. Shortlist me to help you maybe with your interview prep if you can't get an appointment immediately. And you'll also have access to workshops. So for tomorrow, for example, I'm delivering a webinar on different interview techniques, which will be, just solely for interview. So if any of you are interested in coming along to that, you can obviously, go through the events tab on Target Connect to register for these webinars and workshops as well.
We've got a hand up from Jack.
Yeah, I was just going to, I was going to ask basically in regards to, remember at the beginning of this, when we were talking about have you used the school's services, and then everyone said yes or no, and I said I tried. I think you basically just sort of answered my question in terms of how the school could help with employability stuff as well. It would be nice to maybe have links or stuff to write down as well. I know we're getting a QR code next, but just in terms of all the places you can go, because I've tried using it before and I couldn't find it. I think what I might have done is I might have made the mistake of not signing in as an alumni. Thank you for that, Michael. I might have made that mistake before. I think that's where things went wrong. But yeah, that's why I said I've tried to, because I did, but it didn't really work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to know that there are other things I could do. I just really appreciate whatever help I can get.
If you're ever really stuck getting in touch with the service, I'm just going to put this email in here as well. It'll also be on the slides, but you can get in touch with employability@greenwich.ac.uk. Also, I think sometimes the alumni team, if people get in touch, do forward people onto us as well, if they do need employability help. So there are a few other ways we might be able to, get in touch about that. If in doubt as well, you can always connect with me on LinkedIn and reach out to me there, or just through my university email address. I don't know if you'll have that already, but I can maybe be CC'd in the emails we send out after, so that all of you have that if you want to get directly in touch with me too.
All right. Thank you very much.
Nice.
So, definitely another question, which was about the CV. How can you assure that it doesn't become too wordy if there's a lot of academic projects that are included, even if it's tailored to the job? that is absolutely always the balance, the trade-off, to be as succinct as possible and straight to the point as you can. Yeah, I guess, Michael, you probably have a better answer to this, but it does usually need a couple of times of editing and really going through it over and over until you've got something that meets both briefs, that is clear enough and also comprehensive enough.
Yeah, I think Olive's hit the nail on the head there, that it can take a couple of tries. I know, sometimes you might find that it only works when you've got a few more words, right? At the end of the day, I want you to feel that you're presenting your experience as well as you possibly can. Advice is there, like, you don't see, I don't know, I can't give football analogies now, I'm trying to be something different, but you don't see like Lionel Messi taking the same advice that Cristiano Ronaldo would take for his game, right? So there's different ways that it works for different people. So for some people, they may need to use more words because maybe what they want to put forward is a little bit more complex. Maybe it could be for a particular role that you need to give a little bit more detail on something. What I'd say is always write with intent. So if you've got a role in mind, it's always going to be easier to know what's relevant information and what you can maybe leave out when you're talking about certain projects. So keep that target in mind, have a job description in front of you when you're sorting out your CV. And where possible, like I said, just try to really write with that intent. And ideally as well, one thing that really helps is just breaking it up into bullet points. Some people come to me with 6-line paragraphs for every work experience they've done. As a recruiter, I'm probably going to read the first 2 lines before I move on. But if you've got bullet points, I'm more likely to read the first 2, and quite often we'll pack more into a bullet point because we'll get rid of the fluff around it. So yeah, ultimately it is a choice, but at the end of the day, if you're breaking it into bullet points and writing with intent, you should be along the right lines.
And one more thing that I wanted to add from a point of view of having hired as well, actually having hired Greenwich students in the past in my previous role as creative director, I was always looking at CVs, but that was kind of the entry card. And really what I was looking at most was the show reels, because I wanted to see the practice, the skill, the creativity, the personal handwriting, and how you position yourself as an artist. So, and that is also, again, a little bit your choice, whether you want to position yourself as an all-rounder or a specialist. And you might have more than one show reel for these occasions because you all have more than one skill. And I would take the show reel very seriously because, recruiters and also companies, they will look at it. And it is worth spending a bit of time on this and always start putting your best foot forward and make a strong impression.
We had one question from a couple of attendees who couldn't make it this evening. So it's sort of around the industry. So are there any skills that are most in demand in the animation industry right now, or anything that they should look to maybe focus on?
Maybe, Ryan, do you want to answer this one?
I can try, yes. So I think most of the more generic skills that you've all experienced because you've been through the degree are the same. There's nothing much changed in terms of being able to use the software, understanding the underlying sort of what is happening when the software does what it does, having good skills in generic animation principles, but also maybe some more specific areas that are, things that you're an expert in, be that, a specific field like texturing or rigging, or being sort of a little bit more focused on a specific area like storytelling. They're all quite useful. The things that have come to my attention recently are some elements around game specific stuff. So if any of you are looking to get into the games industry as an artist, there was a good thread on Twitter, I refuse to call it X, I'm sorry, on Twitter, that was discussing how some games degrees specifically are leaving out some practice that people are expected to know, and don't tell our colleagues in computing, but Greenwich was mentioned in the replies. So I might need to have a word with Darren about that. but it was things around understanding texel density, trim sheets, essentially slightly more complicated ways of doing doing texturing and UV mapping that allow for a more optimized and streamlined workflow. And it's one of these things that is very prevalent in the industry, but not really discussed that much because it's a little bit challenging to get your head around when you're just starting out. So we've talked, the majority of the people that I see in the meeting, we talked about texel density before, for example. So it's extending that knowledge is really useful. Now, in terms of more general animation, we've discussed the rise of AI and the problems that generative AI could potentially have in the industry. We actually discussed that last week in one of our sessions and was looking at how Coca-Cola have done some AI-based adverts or commissioned some. I don't know if they're actually going to show them widespread or not. But that is quite worrying because that gives the impression that essentially, AI is here to stay. However, I do believe that that is a limited impact at the moment. It is really going to have a big impact in advertising because it's a lot cheaper and quicker to do some of this stuff through AI. More long form animation is not really going to be affected by that at the moment, or at least not in the same way. The other thing to note is what's the highest grossing film that's come out recently is Moana 2. It's only been out, a week now, and has already grossed a huge amount of money. So I think there is probably going to be a shift in the bigger animation companies towards trying to secure very profitable releases. So you'll see, a lot more sequels, a lot less risk taking. That does then open up the possibility of that risk taking being done by smaller independent companies, individual animators or indie companies or freelancers. And, we are in a situation where we may start to see some more money being made available for that type of work, slowly but surely, through government and various other means this is me being very speculative at the moment, so it could not happen, but that's the kind of feeling that I'm getting. In the next couple of years, you'll see some of that movement. But in terms of applying for jobs, in terms of making sure that you're putting your best skills forward, tailoring your work to what the company requires, as we've seen some discussion about here, and really just making sure that you're networking, as difficult as that can be. Having inroads into the industry and being able to speak to people who are working and who know what they need is going to be a really, really beneficial thing, because then you'll be able to target absolutely what you're trying to put forward in your portfolio, covering letter, CV, show reel, etc. So yeah, just make sure you get networking. Basically, I think that's a really big thing at the moment. But yes, that's what I've got to say on that.
Maybe just to add very quickly, I think also look beyond the animation industry as in a defined industry. There's so many jobs in advertising, in education, in product design, and beyond, right? So, and I know that some of our graduates are actually working actively in these fields. So I would absolutely look beyond just the movie industry, because there's so much more. Specifically, I would encourage you to look into advertising. There is a lot of money to go around there, and then embrace your soft skills, because you have them. You have worked so hard on this degree, and God knows we made you work hard too, and we know it wasn't always easy. So you own all of this, right? So all of your successes and your achievements, that's there. So I would, in every job interview, really be very articulate and very clear about all of these soft skills, right? You mentioned, Maria, problem solving. That's such an important one. Collaborative workflows. I think each and everybody has so much in terms of these transferable skills to show So all of the advice that Mike gave you today about just thinking exactly how to formulate this, articulate this for the job interview, I would take that on board. Yeah, and you can absolutely be assured every company will be lucky to have you.
Thank you very much. That's the end of the session. So unless anyone else has any other questions, but feel free to keep them in the chat or contact one of us. We'd be more than happy to answer your questions. This session has also been recorded, so we'll make sure this is shared with everyone after. So you'll receive an email tomorrow or the day after asking for your feedback as well. So feel free to share with us any sort of questions you might have, or if there's anything else you want us to cover in the future. I'm sure Olive, Michael and Ryan would be more than happy to potentially do this again, you know, if we have a sort of interest there. So please feel free to get in touch. Yeah, we'll be sharing with you more details tomorrow. But yeah, I think that's it from us. If you'd like to say goodbye, but thank you very much.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you.
A massive thank you to Michael, Min, and Jordan for organizing this. Really absolutely amazing.